Well, here we go. Hello, Boulder Frequency listeners. I am really thrilled to welcome today's very special guest. When we started this podcast, we figured we would have conversations with our most interesting community leaders. And right away, Nicole Glaros was atop my personal list for reasons that I will personally share in just a moment. But Nicole, I cannot thank you enough for joining us so early in this podcast and sharing some of your stories with us.
Thank you for having me. And of course, like my reaction to that is if I'm at the top of your list, you need to get out more.
That's definitely not true, but anyone who knows me knows you are right in the center of two of my personal favorite topics, and clearly yours, more importantly, the startup ecosystem and professional women's soccer. So, my aim is to talk about at least those two things. But of course, we're going to go back to the beginning a little bit before we drill right into Techstars and early stage startups and Denver Summit FC. The fun question for me is to ask you to introduce yourself when you're involved in so many things. How do you introduce yourself today?
Oh, well, it actually depends on who's interviewing me, to be honest. At the moment, I spend a majority of my time with Matchstick. So I'm a partner over at Matchstick Ventures. We are a pre-seed and seed stage fund that focuses between the coasts. And we're currently investing out of Fund 4. So I spend a lot of time with startups. I spend a lot of time on deploying capital and supporting companies, between the coasts.
The startup
Yeah.
ecosystem and your huge role in it over the last 15 years is definitely one of the two major things I want to talk about. So that is all in play, very relevant for this audience. I was going to say, we have two major doors to open up. One is the Denver Summit FC, the For Denver door that you opened up for all of us soccer people, and the other one is the startup ecosystem. Do you have a preference which one we start with? No. Okay.
Whatever, wherever you want to take it.
Well, Nicole and I were joking. We've never actually met. We almost met years ago in Techstars. I moved to town in 2011. One of the things that really drew me here at a time where I was really drawn and working with early stage startups, I worked with one when I moved to this great town, and Techstars was very much on my radar coming from Southern California. Um, I go back that far to Techstars, which I believe you were involved in it already in a big way by 2011, right? When did you get started with Techstars?
Yeah, the fun story there is I actually knew David Cohen before he started Techstars, and he pitched the idea to me. And then in 2008, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next, and he said, "Hey, remember that thing I pitched you? I started it. Will you come help?" And and at that moment, he had already gone through the first Techstars cohort, which is 2007. So he'd ultimately invested in 10 companies. Um, and so yeah, I got to help from then on, right up until 2022. So when I left, by the time I left, we Techstars had invested in over 3,000 companies. That was making 500 new investments a year, 650 pro rata decisions a year. We had raised a couple $150 million venture funds. We had just shy of $1 billion under management. We had what, 300 employees, 19 countries, something like that. So it was a crazy ride for sure. But basically, I have been involved since 2008.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, the details sometimes escape me now looking back on it, but I vaguely remember that the first cohort was right in that time frame. David Cohen, of course, one of the founders of Techstars, along with David Brown, Nicole in there from the very beginning. And when I was in Southern California. I'm from Ohio originally. In Southern California, all you heard about, of course, were some of the California-centric startup accelerators and, of course, VCs. But Techstars was already on the radar nationally at that very early stage in town, in time, and so really you were involved pretty continuously through 2022, and we're of course going to come back to the glorious later parts of the story here too. But I think I know this. By the way, I wanted to mention as I was preparing to talk to you, I visited nearlynicole.com and I realized even in the last year you've written really well about pretty much everything I'm going to ask you about today. So,
That's
listeners, if you'd
right.
rather, go read it from Nicole directly on her own website, nearlynicole.com. But how did your role really evolved over that first entire run that you had with Techstars, which covered quite some ground?
Yeah, I mean, in the early days, well, like we all did all the things. There were no real like role boundaries. Maybe is the way to say it, right? And I mean, I remember having like, I mean, I was going to Boston to support the team in Boston. I was going to Seattle to support the team in Seattle. In the early days, the training structure was send Nicole to said location, and Nicole will hire and train new staff. And at the time, I had two very small children. In fact, we spent we moved to Texas to help Jason Seeds open up the Techstars Cloud program in San Antonio. We did that when my son was 5 weeks old. My daughter wasn't quite two yet. We were then in New York for a while, like moved to New York for a little while to help support that program. My son at that time was 18 months. My daughter was right? Like almost, well, a little over three and a half, right? So it was like this process of send Nicole to said location, and Nicole will help like hire and train and spin up new programs. So and so then I'd run like a lot of programs, and I was also craving change. And so I sort of moved into a chief product officer role and then a chief innovation officer role as Techstars had really grown, and then eventually over to a chief investment strategy officer role. And by that time, we had, as I had mentioned, we had probably 300 employees, 19 countries. At some point, all the managing directors inside of Techstars were reporting to me. So my role at that point was like was hiring and training new managing directors and making sure that they were learning how to be phenomenal investors. Um, and that was not easy to do because we were growing so quickly and hiring new managing directors at a clip. And investing is really an apprenticeship sport. It's not something you can learn how to do by reading a book. You really need somebody to sort of take you under your wing and show you the ropes and teach you, because every situation is unique, every situation is different. Um, and when I learned, and even when David Cohen learned, right, like we had Brad Feld, we had Jason Mendelson, we had Seth Levine, we had Ryan McIntyre, we had a phenomenal group of people that were really helping support us in our learning journeys on how to be investors. And it was like, how do you replicate that for the next generation of investors? And it's still a question I ask myself to this day, because I've been in the space a long time, and I run into a lot of really young investors, which is amazing, especially young women investors. Because when I started, there were none. There's like two in the whole country. And there's a lot of people that are not getting the right apprenticeship support that they need in order to be really good at the job. And I think we're seeing the reflection of that in returns of some of these venture funds. That's not the only thing contributing to the returns of some of
Yeah,
these venture funds, but it's certainly one of them. So um, anyway, I basically held every role inside of Techstars all
yeah,
the way through when I left. And that was probably one of the reasons why I stayed a long time is um I don't want to say I get, well, I guess maybe I do. Like I get bored easily, but boredom's not the word. It's like, oh, I did that. Okay, let's let somebody else now professionalize it. I figured it out. Let somebody else professionalize it. And now what's over there? Like that looks
yeah,
like a problem, or that looks like an opportunity. And it just so happened that my career like aligned with the growth of an explosion of Techstars that enabled me to do those things. Right. So like I have will always have Techstars in my heart for like we grew up together. We really did.
yeah.
We got a lot of things wrong too. But so yeah, and I mean I think you can see that sort of
Yeah.
pattern continue after I
Well,
left
not only that,
Techstars.
but the founder DNA in you that, leads you to evolve into new challenges, even as your organization, Techstars in this case, grows. But for those who don't know that, definitely in the early days, I remember because I moved here in 2011 to work for Vodago, a startup that was not part of the Techstars family, but the energy at that point in time in this town was incredible. I thought largely owing to Techstars. Startup Week was incredible, is roared back, I think, in a pretty big way, or maybe has been amazing all along. I don't want to disparage any of the tougher years during the pandemic and so on, but just the energy when I first moved here that you could literally walk down Pearl Street. And the model for those who don't know is that you would get great groups of founders together in Boulder or in New York or Seattle, the original cities that you mentioned, all of them, I think, and then the network grew pretty massive, and there would be company sponsors of some of the accelerators. They'd be in many locations around the world. I mean, if you don't know much about Techstars, go look back at the history of it before we come to the modern day renaissance, if I can call it that. That's my word. I want to ask you about that. But, just following your path with the path of Techstars and the many, many, many companies that you reached and engaged, and the founders especially. has always been pretty mind blowing for me. My story was then I moved away. Then I came back in 2014 to interview for a company role at Techstars. So that's how close we almost came to working together. And I remember having a walking interview with David Brown right down Pearl Street, and having a burrito with David Cohen, and being in the bathroom right between Brad and Daniel Feld, and thinking in startup mythology, you're supposed to make the most of these elevator pitch moments that you might get in the most unexpected places. So, um,
Not in the bathroom.
not in the bathroom though, but there's
Not in
some
the
pretty.
bathroom. There's some sacred places that you
I
just don't
agree.
do
So
it.
I kept my mouth shut just for the record. But I'll have to say, there's something about it's a 20-year-old blog post about meeting someone at the urinal, and yeah, I think we have too much taste for that. But just blown away, obviously, if you can't tell by what you all accomplished over the years with Techstars. I think it would be a good time to fast forward and say, in your words, there's been a roaring back of Techstars and its Boulder presence over the last
Mhm.
year, I would say, or it's
Mhm.
probably been for you a couple year journey. Can you share what has happened? I know this is probably a very long story, but how would you share how we got to where we are now in 2025 with Techstars back on the map in Boulder?
Yeah, Techstars, under the leadership of Mael, decided to pull out of Boulder, and I understood the reasons why at the time. I can't remember what year that was. I want to say maybe it was 2022.
Sounds about right.
No, it couldn't have been 2022. It must have been 2023 or 2024. Um, and I understood at the time why, but like I said, Techstars and I grew up together, and I saw the impact that it had on Boulder. And looking at the returns of the Boulder program, I mean, the returns of the Boulder program were phenomenal. And so, like, from an investor perspective, an investment decision, like, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. I understood why it did for Techstars, but like for the community, I think it was hard. And also, just from an investment perspective, there was leaving a lot of opportunity on the table. And so, Natty Zola and I got together, and we're really trying to figure out how to fill that void. And we were actually working on a something that would have been independent of Techstars, just because we believe that Colorado has the DNA to really help launch phenomenal startups while generating a return for the investors. And during that time, David Cohen had taken over uh, back Techstars as the CEO, and he came to us and he said, "Hey, why don't we just partner on this?" And so it felt like a coming home, and so we've recently announced the new managing partner that will be running that program is a guy by the name of Shay Harnoy, and he is a local guy. He's been in Boulder for, I want to say, close to a decade now. He's raising his kids here, but he's also an entrepreneur. He started a number of businesses and have sold. He's been a mentor at Techstars for a number of years, and so that was really important to us. We needed somebody with an entrepreneurial background, that understand what it takes to grow and to start and grow these things, but also somebody that was really deeply embedded in the community. You behave different when your child is going to school next to your investors' children and the startups themselves. These things matter, and so we feel
Yeah.
really lucky in being able to get Shy on board, and now we're just trying to lay the framework, right? So we're out there, we're getting the right people in place, and that's going to take a little bit, but we're getting closer every day, and hopefully we'll have a program running next year.
Well, it's a huge. I asked you to tell that story in very enlightening terms, and I know there was many chapters along the way, but it's a huge thank you and debt of gratitude for those of us who, moved here to be part of this startup feeling and atmosphere that we've had. And I don't think it's a coincidence. You can feel it roaring back now. And every day there's new news about
Right.
either a startup that's grown or someone that's going to relocate to Boulder, or there's more people in Boulder. You mentioned Shy. You mentioned Natty, of course, a founder you met along the way through Techstars, right? And then later, a fellow managing director here in Boulder. And now I'm going to ask you about your transition to Matchstick. I believe your partner now, correct? You've made the full
Yes.
transition to, yeah, okay. But before I go there, that's my opinion. How does it feel to you, having gone through all these chapters? Do you feel the same energy level from a startup activity standpoint, or a different type because maybe we're more sophisticated, mature from a kind of startup evolutionary point as a town, the types of success stories we have, who we cater to now as entrepreneurs? How does it feel to you having done all this work over the last couple of years?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It's a complex question. Well, I should say it's a complex answer, right? I I feel complexity around it. So what I would say is looking back on the history, when I moved to Colorado, there was not much going on at all. And so one of the things I have been really impressed with was how much more activity, like it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And that is really fun and exciting to see. And it's like in Colorado, you can't even like walk down the street now without overhearing a conversation around your target customer and the like the investors that you fundraised for, or like start some sort of startup activity where, man, when I first moved here, there was nothing. And I think that trajectory is the exact right trajectory, right? We kind of look around. In fact, I was talking to investor yesterday that was asking me about how Colorado compares to the Bay. And I was like, well, it's like the Bay has always, I mean, as far as I've been alive, like the Bay's always had a lot of startup energy and it kind of comes in waves, but it's always been really robust. Colorado has been constantly growing. And so while we've had our down moments, and every ecosystem will, so that's normal, um, but the trajectory, the big trajectory is the right one. And so in 10 years from now, it's going to be even better. And in 10 years from then, it's going to be even better. And I love that, right?
Yeah.
And so I also think we're just becoming more mature. There's way more funds that are here than were here when I first started. There's way more investment happening here than when I started. There's way more support for startups. There's better talent that's here than when I started. And so all of that trajectory is the right way. I think what's hard for me is that and I think this is just it's an experience or age thing, is like the longer you're in a space, less and less is new. And so there's a part of me, like I will find myself sometimes being like, oh, it's another one of those. And as soon as I feel that, I have to like step back and take a deep breath and remember, no, no, no. Like these are, first of all, these are people, and it's not common where you see the first to market win. A lot of times you see second to markets win. And so just because it's another one of those doesn't mean it. It means if they can do it better. And so I think this is where new investors in the system are really important because they're like they see everything as a possibility, where the longer you've been in the system, you see everything as a
Yeah.
likely failure. And you need both of those perspectives together in order to make great investment decisions, I think. So so I have to work on the like, oh, it's another one of those, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but I also one of the reasons I love the space is yeah, it's about the companies, but it's really been about the people. Like
Yeah.
I think all entrepreneurs are artists. I think their medium is business, and I think that's the hardest medium around. And unlike a sculptor who can like work on a sculpture and then if it doesn't work they just kind of put it in a closet, nobody needs to know about it, and they like you can't do that with a startup, right? You put your reputation on the line, you put your relationship with your significant other on the line, you put all your finances on the line. You have to convince customers, you have to convince employees, you have to convince investors. And it's just so hard. And so I just love the people, and I will continue to love the people, even if they're working on something that I'm like, oh, that's never going to work, you know?
Well,
So,
yeah, clearly. And, ano- I think what you just said is a good reminder for all of us because it would be easier to feel like, oh, the activity really quieted down during the pandemic again, or it's not the early stage startup town that it was before. I don't feel that way really when I stop and think about all the great people I've met, number one, even in the last couple of years. And also, we have so many success stories of various sizes over the last 10 and 20 years now on the watch of Techstars and so many other enablers of startups around town across the county too, not just Boulder, but obviously Longmont and Lafayette, Louisville, and so it really still feels like a startup community across the board, even before we get back to this moment of Techstars coming back in a big way. So I think there was a little bit of a call to action in there, by the way, when you said we always need new investors, new mentors for startup for Techstars. I will put that plug in there, of course. Um, Probably new founders to approach Matchstick. That will bring me to this question. And I read about this on your site. You wrote about it in pretty good detail, but you obviously, after your official run with Techstars ended in 2022, you put yourself through what I would describe, you describe this better, as a period of really intense reflection in how you wanted to spend your next phase. How did that lead you to where you are right now? I mean, Matchstick specifically, because obviously you're still clearly committed to Techstars and the other thing I'm going to ask you about in a minute as well.
yeah, I mean, I had been at Techstars for like 14 years. And it's just a long time to be in any one place. And I loved every minute of it. Well, I loved most minutes of it, right? But I also had been so heads down for so long that I felt like I needed a break in order to reassess what I wanted to do in this next chapter. Do I want to even stay in venture? Do I want to get out of venture? Um, and so I ended up going through this process of just self-reflection and I mean yes I wrote a lot about it, right? But the two tools that really helped me a lot were this concept called morning pages, which was pioneered by a woman named Julia Cameron in her book The Artist's Way. And if you haven't read that book, I actually do recommend it. It's a book for artists that helps them learn to be creative sustainably and regularly. And one of the tools that she has them do is this thing called morning pages, which is basically like journaling, but it's not exactly the same thing as journaling because, like, journaling in my mind had this. I have to talk about my feelings all the time and what I experienced in my day, and I always felt like it felt like kind of a big ask. I don't know, like I'm going to sit down and journal about my feelings all the time. Like sometimes I just want to I don't know what to say, but morning pages was like a flushing of your of like top like just top of mind flush. Like it's a brain dump of what's going on in your mind in that moment. And that felt like a lot easier. And so for the first time in my life, I was actually able to keep a journal through morning pages. So sit down and write for 3 pages. And sometimes I would just write, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. And I would write that over and over again until finally I would be like, I would start to make poems with, I don't know what to write. And then I would start like, you just, it kind of like pulls on, it like unclogs the mind a little bit from what's happening in this exact present moment, which was fun. And then the second tool I used a lot was this concept of Odyssey pages, which comes from the book of Designing Your Life. Um, and that was like an exploration of like what are all the different paths that are interesting to me, and it had nothing to it had less to do with what I was resourced for and more to do with what's interesting. And there's a little bit of a methodology around doing each Odyssey page, and through each Odyssey page I started crossing things off. I was like, okay, I think we all have a dream. Maybe not we all do, but a lot of people I talk to have a dream of like moving to Costa Rica and opening an Airbnb or something like that. And then when I sat down and wrote it out and I start to write out like what my day to day would look like, I was like, no, I don't want to do laundry. I don't want to deal with people's like vomit all over the toilet because they partied too hard the night before. This is awful. Even if you hired somebody for that, you have to deal with a person having to deal with that. Like I don't I don't want that, you know. So where I got to was I really do I really love being at the intersection of technology and people. I love being part of those discussions and those conversations. I love being able to shape that stuff, even if it's in a small way. I love being able to influence founders and how they approach the world and their executive teams, because I think if we can help them lead with values, then they pass those good values down to their executive teams, which will take those values home, right? I think it's a wonderful point of impact in the community. But I also love the intersection of technology on that, right? Like I looked at a startup recently and I ended up passing on it because I actually think the company will probably do well, but I just don't want to put that technology out into the world. I don't want to be part of it. So I've experienced that a couple times in my career, actually. So anyway, um, it turned out like that investing, I actually like investing. I just needed some space from it. And the stuff at Techstars, the way that Techstars had grown had sort of pulled me away from some of the things that I'd most love to do. And so if I could get back to doing those things in the way that I wanted to do them, then it's a wonderful place to be, right? And so anyway, the journaling, the morning pages, the Odyssey pages, those things really help me get clarity around that, um, which led me to Matchstick, right? So, but I would say Matchstick wasn't the only firm I talked to. I talked to a few different firms, and one of the reasons I ended up with Matchstick was because of a couple reasons, really. So, number one was I talked to the partners at these firms, and I loved the people. But then when I spent time with the partnerships were toxic. And I just like, I don't need that in my life. I don't need to like be trading like I'll do your deal, I'll vote for your deal if you vote for my deal, and like you screwed me on the last one, so I'm going to screw you on this one. Like that's not healthy in any way, and I don't want to spend 1 ounce of my energy on those things. And the matchstick partnership is very, very healthy. The second thing is that I some of the firms I talked to was like, oh, well, they need another GP. Like they need somebody to slide into this role to do deals and I said I'm a move fast and break shit kind of person. I like to experiment. I want to rearrange the deck chairs all the time. I want to like figure out how we can do things better. So it's not just about doing deals for me. It's actually about firm building and firm improving and like how do we experiment with these things to get better at our jobs constantly. And I didn't feel like I had the flexibility in order to do that in some of the other firms. So but Matchstick is, Natty and Ryan, and I've known Natty for 15 years and Ryan for 10, and they're like, yeah, let's do it. Like let's experiment with all the things, and let's fix the stuff that's not working, and let's optimize the stuff that is working. And like I kind of love the orientation. So and then the trust runs deep, so it was really easy to step on the gas. I didn't have to spend a lot of time like developing that relationship. I mean, in a partnership is hard. It's basically a marriage. So, that we're values aligned and we're lifestyle aligned and we're like see the world in the same ways, and that made it really easy to go fast.
That is awesome. That's a big congratulations from me because I always love to see founders who I've admired over the years or groups of people that have worked on something get back together. I think it's a sports thing, it's a business thing. Like you said, founders are artists. Founding teams is a different type of art because you're basically trying to make art together. I think good partnerships must feel like a certain type of art too, where you're complementing each other. And most importantly, it's this process getting back into investing with Matchstick has allowed you just enough time to do one last incredible thing that I have to ask you about. And for those who don't know, Nicole was a huge driver in what has now become Denver, Denver's own Denver Summit FC, our professional NWSL National Women's Soccer League team, which has been quite a story that kicks off in March at Empower Field. By the way, just announced this week,
Mhm.
the first game we're going to attempt to break attendance records, and we'll go to the Mile High Stadium just to do exactly that. You've been involved in this movement for at least a couple of years. You were involved at the very early stages with what was called For
Yeah.
Denver FC. How did you get involved in it, and what were some of those early days of this movement that was truly grassroots at first that led us to getting our own pro soccer team?
Yeah. So this is all Jacqueline Hester's fault. If you don't know Jacqueline Hester, she's one of the partners over at Foundry. And when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do after I left Techstars, she had said to me, "You really should start a women's professional soccer team." And I was like, "I have no idea why you think that. Like, I don't play soccer. I don't watch sports. I'm not a spectator sport person. I don't know anything about the business of sport. Like, why would you think that?" And she said, "Well, just go watch the Angel City documentary on HBO and tell me if you still feel that way." So, I was in an exploratory mode. And so I didn't have HBO at the time. I went over to her house and sat down and watched watched the 3 episodes of this documentary. And in it, there is a woman named Kara Norman, who is also a VC, but she's a VC in the Bay, in Los Angeles. And, and I know of Kara, like, while we're not close, we know of each other. We travel in similar circles. She's also a venture capitalist, right? So I was like, wait a second. I thought I kind of thought you had to be a billionaire to like start and own a professional sport team. And here's somebody that's like me that did it. That's interesting. You know, I just was like, I noted it that's interesting. And then there's another scene with Abby Wambach where if you don't know who Abby Wambach is, she is one of the most decorated women's professional soccer players in the country. And she also played on the U.S. women's national team for like, I think well over a decade or something. And she was getting the Icon SP Award, which is a lifetime achievement award for when you retire. And she was getting it at the same time on stage as Kobe Bryant and Peyton Manning. And they interviewed her afterwards and they said, wow, how did that feel? That must have felt like so amazing to be getting an award at the same time as Kobe Bryant and Peyton Manning. And she said, actually, like what I felt is rage. I felt rage because I had to hurry up and get home because I had a job interview because I can't afford health insurance for my family. And I have achieved as much, if not more, as them because she has won on the global scale, on the global stage. You know, U.S. women's soccer team was place number one for well over a decade. But she's like, but I'm not going into this a retirement with the same financial status as they are. And she's like, said, not that I begrudge them their success, but why haven't I had the same amount of success? And I got angry. Angry is actually the word. Like I was pissed for her. And I have a daughter. And I also, growing up as a woman in VC, understood what it meant to just be rare in how to like eke out your economic living in sort of this world that's surrounded with money. And I just got mad. And so I started doing homework. I was like, well, what's the state of women's sport in Colorado? Wait, none? Wait. We have six men's professional teams, six, including lacrosse, and we don't have a single women's professional anything? That kind of blew my mind, right? And so at the time, this is the thought process that was going through my head. And I was like, well, okay, I know how to raise money, so I feel like I could raise money for this. I know about startups and what's a team? It's just a startup, right? I don't know anything about soccer, but we hire people that could do that. Like, I don't need to know anything about soccer. And I know a lot about building community. I mean, that's what we did at Techstars. And I feel like you need a community in order for a professional sport team to win. So, okay, I feel like I have some basic ingredients. And then I sat there and I thought, okay, if I was going to start a team, what would it be? It has to be basketball or soccer. I don't know why I thought that. It just, those are the two. And I picked soccer because basketball was indoors and I wanted to be outside. Like I live in Colorado, I want to be outside. That was literally the reason why I picked soccer. But then when I started looking at the soccer setup, I said, wow, did you know that three out of the 10 starting players on the US women's national team, which win number one globally for a decade, are from Colorado, but they can't play here because we don't have a team here? That kind of blew my mind. And I just I was like, this is an amazing market. So this my entrepreneur brain kicked in, right? I'm like, this is an amazing market for a women's professional sport. We Colorado produces globally like the globally best talent in the world. So we could win if we had a team. We got to do this. So I just started digging around. I said somebody else has to be working on this. And I found two groups actually. One I talked to, and they were very enthusiastic, but I just didn't think had the talent inside the team to pull it off. And then I met Ben Hubbard, and Ben Hubbard is the founder. He's the founder of a company called Parcel, which started here in Colorado. And I was like, okay, we got a CEO that knows how about startups. He had recruited somebody named Tom Dunmore, which is 20 plus year career in sports. Also, a woman named Jordan Angeli, who was a used to play for the NWSL and now does broadcast for CBS and the NWSL. And I was like, I fit into this group perfectly. So I like stalked them, and then they were like, we would love to have you join. So I was the last person in that little group to join. We ended up bringing on Stacey Carter later, who I worked with at Techstars to sort of help with the legal and finance stuff. But yeah, we I can't believe it happened. We did have to pull. So Rob Cohen is now the control owner, and so we approached Rob to see if he would be willing to be the control owner, and we were very delightfully surprised when he said yes. When we sort of handed him all of the work that we had done up to that point, we probably had 2+ years of work in it, and Rob's really got it over the finish line. It's because of Rob's effort that we got the expansion license with the NWSL, and I think it's just a big team effort, right? So here we are. Kickoff is November 28th at noon at Mile High, and we are going to set every NWSL record for kickoff games. So if you don't have your ticket, please get it. I want to open up the top level of this football stadium. Let's
Yeah.
show them how to do it.
I
And
don't mean to correct you. March 28th. We both wish it was November 28th, but it's March
oh,
28th.
did I say
Yeah.
November? Yes, March. So
But that
November
just gives us a
28th
little
is my
more time to
son's
fill.
birthday.
Yeah, well, that's a great day too, and it would be
Yeah,
NWSL's just reached the playoffs for this season. So now Jordan
yeah.
Angeli
November.
broadcasting on decision night on
Yes.
Sunday, and but
Yes.
there's a lot of momentum right now. The organization has hired amazing soccer people and business people. Um, it's interesting when you tell the story because, and when you think back to Abby Wambach's comments and the retirement of Alex Morgan, who I would imagine is probably the top earning global icon in the sport, the economics have changed enough where you do need a pretty significant ownership team. That was the Angel City story. That's definitely the story here just to
Yeah.
get into the league. But the work is not done, obviously, as I'm sure any of the players and staffers would tell you. We still need the the pie to be shared broadly across all the players and off-field talent that make these teams so incredible to watch. And if you're caught up in the CU Buffs, who are a top 15 team in the country right now, heading into the NCAA tournament, all of the local soccer clubs, which I'm part of, I mean, this is an incredible place to have a pro women's soccer team. It's a little mind-boggling that we haven't to date, but it's very fortunate that you were involved in getting us to the point that we are at. And there's a lot, fortunately, that's been written about it because coverage, I think, has improved so much too. So I won't ask you too much, and I'm being mindful of the clock as we approach 90 minutes and stoppage time. But there has to have been one, I don't know, scary moment along the way, or key moment, or pivotal moment. Was there just one kind of moment that most people might not know about that kind of felt like maybe a make or break moment? Of course, it was down to Colorado and my home state of Ohio at one point. I don't know. Is there anything? Is
Yeah.
there any little tales worth sharing there? If not, it's okay. But I had to ask that question.
Yeah, it's funny. I bet if you asked every person involved that you would probably get all different answers, right?
Yeah,
And for me, I would say the moment was was actually way before that, right? It was when it was the four of us. It was Tom, Ben, Jordan, and I, and we had gotten a definitive answer from the league that was basically like, you guys won't win unless you have a control owner.
yeah,
And we were really trying to model, like like I could pull the capital together. I believe that I could pull all of the capital together, and I thought that the four of us had the talent in order to like run a team of our own. And when the league said, "You guys, we won't do it without a control owner, so unless one of the four of you are can write a, you know, huge check, you're never going to win the expansion bid."
yeah.
And it really deflated. It deflated how much work we had done, and it deflated our interest in it. And it was like a kick in the stomach, really. And but what I will say is, after licking our wounds for like a week, we said, wait a second, why did we get into this in the first place? We didn't get into this in the first place so we could control it and we could run it. We got into this because it needs to exist. So let's just go make that happen. And we literally put together a spreadsheet of every person in Colorado that we thought could write a check of that size. Um, we started at the top, and Rob Cohen was the second name on that list, not the first. But the first name on that list didn't want it to be in Denver, and the league wasn't going to have it any other place other than Denver.
Yeah.
So Rob was the second name on that list, and we were amazingly surprised that he said yes. So we didn't have to go any further than that, right? But that was the moment for me. And then there was lots of little moments after that, like
Yeah.
it was between us and your home state, and we were hearing all these rumors, and there was a couple moments where we like thought we were going to pull out of the expansion bid altogether. But that moment was maybe one of the most painful ones,
That's an
and I'm
incredible
actually
one.
glad that we got past it.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, and we're very fortunate that you persevered in true founder style. I mean, that's an interesting one, obviously, because the controlling owner is very much an American pro sports staple, which is both a blessing and a curse depending on which league and which franchise you're talking about. It's not really historically a staple of the world football game or the world, the sport of soccer, where so many teams and clubs started as clubs, community ownership, and so on. Definitely trending back in that direction when you get into American owners in Europe, Middle Eastern owners across Europe and across the world. So the economics of our sport are changing drastically, but for
Hmm.
better or for worse. But in this case, for better, because you just added someone incredible to the team who could make it happen. And here we are. We get to look forward to March 28th at Empower Field. Um, well, I'm going to wrap this up because you've been generous in sharing a lot of stories with us. I have to ask you two really quick questions. Um, you've shared a lot with us about two things that you've really moved back into the forefront, Techstars, or delivering to us for the first time, Denver Summit. What's a call to action? What's something that we should all do right now to support either one of these things? Not to put you on the spot, but
Oh man.
buy season tickets for the summit. Buy some tickets
Well,
either
you
for the
can't
opening game.
you yeah, you can't buy season tickets anymore. Season tickets sold out.
Sold out, yes. So
Uh, yep, but you can buy single game tickets, and especially for the opening game, like I said, we're trying to fill that stadium. That's like what, 70,000 seats? I mean, if we could do that, that would be a dream. So I would say the big ask there is get tickets for that first game, buy Denver Summit swag, get your t-shirts, get your sweatshirts. There's actually some really cool sweatshirts that are for sale now. They just like released yesterday, I think. So get your Denver Summit swag. And to the extent that you can attend games, please do. Like I would say the first couple years are, hey, look, if we could be in the top 10 in the first year, that'd be amazing. I don't expect that. It's a startup, right? And all the players aren't even in place yet. So, but come to games and support the team, even if we're not doing well at first, which I wouldn't expect us to because it's just getting off the ground. And I think that will set the stage for helping this team and women's sports in general be successful in Colorado. So it's not just about Denver Summit, it's also about women's professional sports and changing the dynamics there. So that's that ask. And then I think for Techstars, the ask is we're still in the formation stages. So the best thing we could do at this point is support Shy and what he needs. And I think the thing he could always use is deal flow, like great startups. So if you're a startup or a great startup that is interested in going through a 13-month intensive boot camp, and you get to get a lot of mentors with people like me and Natty and a lot of other entrepreneurs in the Boulder community, talk to Shy because we'd love to have you in that program.
perfect. Excellent. Well, I know we got to wrap. I have to ask you one last question that we like to ask all of our guests. What is something you're very optimistic about? And it could be in either of these two areas that we just covered, or it could just be out of
Oh,
left field. It's almost lunch as we record this. It's a beautiful day. The wind has died down. What's
yes.
something you're optimistic about?
Oh man, something I'm optimistic about. I'm kind of like I'm optimistic about AI, but not for the reason that I think most people are. I think a lot of people are scared by AI, and I do think it's scary. I think it can do like I think it can be scary, and I'm always joking with my partners that like we have to be nice to our AI overlords. But I actually think that the next decade of AI is going to look a lot like us humans spending a lot less time doing some of the rote manual tech stuff that we all hate, because this is what AI is really, really good at. And I was just thinking about the other day as I was in my email and I needed to add something to a CRM database that we had, and I was clicking, like I had to do something here and I had to go over there and do something there and then copy and paste from this into that. And I spent like 10 minutes trying to clean all that up. Oh man, AI is just going to make that stuff go away. So like it's going to make me spend less time on my taxes. It's going to make me smarter at reading all the contracts I have to read. So like all that stuff that we don't like to do, I think AI is going to be great at. And so I am optimistic about that.
It's going to allow people with that superpower to connect the right groups of people, founders, founding teams, sporting founding teams, to spend more time doing that and less part doing the dirty work. Well, on that note, I
That's right.
cannot thank you enough. We have 2 episodes worth of stories here, so I'll figure out how to handle that.
Sorry.
But that is a good problem to have. That's exactly why I reached out to you, and I can't thank you enough. Congrats on successes from Techstars to Denver Summit to
Yeah.
Matchstick. Nicole, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks for having me.
I stop recording.